So, my name's Greg Beales and I'm the campaign director at the homelessness charity Shelter. We are the country's largest leading homelessness and housing charity. We have a simple belief that underpins everything we do, which is we believe everybody has the right to a safe home. Whoever you are, whatever your background, wherever you're going in life, we think that safe home is your right and should be the foundation of what you then go on and achieve in life. And that belief gives us a simple mission, which is we want to defend that right for whoever you are, wherever you are. If you need someone to defend that right, we're there for you. That means we do a number of different things in pursuit of defending that right. We provide support and advice to people. We run a national helpline. 4 million people come to our website for advice on their rights and their entitlements every year. And so if you are anyone that's getting into difficulty, that's got questions about the housing system, questions about what's happening to them or what their rights are in a situation, can come to our website, they can get through to our emergency phone line and they can get really practical advice. We also provide very practical on-the-ground services for people who need help. Now that can range from outreach services for people when they're sleeping rough, through to some of the really innovative services we run called Housing First, which are about getting people into a home and then providing all the wraparound support they need to sustain their life in that home, whether that's healthcare, mental health support, in some cases it's support with addiction, budgeting, planning, the things people need to move from a life on the streets back into a life in a home and turn their lives around, employment support. And then the other thing we do is we don't believe it's enough just to help individuals cope in this broken housing system. We also believe it's our responsibility and our mission to fight to change the system that's creating so much injustice in the first place. And so a big part of what we do is campaign for changes in the law, for investment, and changes in the way in which the country and the housing systems run, because we think that we could do things so much better than we do today. There are three really big things that we think need to happen, and which these three things, which if they happened, would go a long way, not just to addressing some of these problems, but to solving the housing emergency as it exists today. The first is that we need to end this practice of no-fault evictions in our private renting system. This is the thing, this is the practice, the rules that allow people to be evicted at 8 weeks' notice for no reason. No other country in Europe has such a lax system and so few protections for people when they rent. Countries like Germany, for example, have lifetime tenancies that say if you do the right things as a tenant, a bit like in work, if you do the right things, you can't just be summarily dismissed. In the same way, if you're a tenant doing the right things, looking after the property, paying your rent on time, you can't just be summarily evicted. And we think that we need that same system in England as they have in many other countries. The second thing is we need housing benefit to cover the cost of rent as it exists in the country today. Housing benefit's been frozen since 2016. In that time, rents have been rising. And if housing benefit doesn't cover the rent cost, too many people get into difficulty. We're literally creating a conveyor belt of financial distress that we end up spending a huge amount more as a society picking up the pieces, because the cost of taking someone off the streets is far greater than the cost of preventing them getting there in the first place. And then the third thing is probably the biggest and most important thing we could do as a country now. And that is to build the social housing that is the bedrock of a successful housing system. We had a commission with politicians, activists, campaigners from across the political spectrum, Conservative, Labour, all parties, that was published at the start of this year. And that commission recommended building 3 million social homes over the next 20 years. That would be transformative for our housing system. And by the way, whilst many things that it's worth spending money on do cost money, the truth about building 3 million homes over the next 20 years is that the cost of that would pay back in full to the government over 40 years through increased economic activity, through savings in the benefit system, through reducing things like the extortionate costs that's paid for all this emergency accommodation. Investing in social homes is actually an investment that pays for itself. It's an incredibly sensible thing to do as a country, and it will bring some sanity back to the housing system, as well as providing a sort of vital stepping stone in life for 3 million families. We've got a new government. Some people will be delighted at that. Some people will be anxious about what that's going to bring. I think from our perspective, we are determined that this should be the Parliament, this should be the government that acts to end the housing emergency. There is nothing inevitable about the problems that you see around you in our housing system. There's nothing inevitable about any of those people sleeping rough on the street, or any of the children who end up in emergency and temporary accommodation because they don't have a home. The Conservative Party have won the election, promised in their manifesto to end the practice of no-fault evictions in the private rented sector. We're going to be working with them to hold them to account for that, and hopefully get that statute into law as quickly as possible. It's going to make a huge difference to people, young and old. They've also promised to end the benefit freeze. So we want to see that brought through as quickly as possible, and we need to see the housing benefit increased in line with rents. It's no good if housing benefit just goes up by some smaller amount. But the commitment that we're looking for from this government, which they haven't yet made, is a commitment about investing in new social homes. We've got a Prime Minister and a government that's talking a lot about infrastructure. They say they want to build infrastructure. They recognise that the country desperately needs, is crying out for new infrastructure. Well, the single most important form of infrastructure investment is new social housing, new homes that people can depend on. And so our request to this government, our campaign to this government, will be to look at the strength of the case around investment in new social housing, and make sure that it's at the top of the list, not the bottom, when they come to prioritising investment in our communities, in our towns and our cities.